Content warning. If you are an adult and you take care of children, the following message may contain content that is damaging to the idea of parenting as you know it. I'm going to tell you about something that adults have a hard time understanding: grace. Adults have a hard time understanding grace because they've grown up in a world with rules and punishments and very little grace. Sure, some rules keep us safe, like don't touch the stove and hold my hand when we cross the street, but probably you can think of some other rules and punishments that just don't make any sense. Human beings can be fearful. We like to keep things in order and control things. So, we make rules to feel safe, or mostly the adults make the rules. But controlling other humans, including children, trying to keep them from doing bad things with rules and punishments, just because you're afraid, isn't loving them, it isn't trusting them, and definitely isn't grace. So what is grace? Let me start with a real-world example. At our library, there used to be fines for turning in books late. Libraries thought, if we make a rule that books need to be turned in on time, we make people pay when they are late. Then they will learn their lesson. But guess what? God created us all uniquely with different strengths and struggles. And so, some people always turn their books in by the due date, and some people, like my mom, never managed to make it to the library on time. So the library decided to stop charging people if their books were late. That's grace, realizing that people are all different and they are not perfect. Some books are going to be early, and some are going to be late. And they might be late for all different reasons we can't even imagine. They got lost, someone took them, they had no way of getting back, or the book was so good you couldn't even let it go. But when the books do come back, guess what? You don't owe anything. The library is still there and filled with even more books, even more chances. Jesus wasn't a librarian, but he shows us what grace looks like. One of Jesus' followers was named Peter. Before Jesus was arrested and killed on Good Friday, Peter and the other disciples were eating dinner with Jesus. No one but Jesus knew what was going to happen the next day. During this dinner, Jesus told his followers that he was not going to be around much longer. Where I'm going, you cannot come. And Peter asked, Lord, where are you going? Why can I not follow you? I will lay down my life for you. But Jesus knew that Peter was not perfect. That even though Peter really believed and wanted to always do the right thing, it was going to be hard for him. So the next day, when Jesus was arrested, Peter went with Jesus and the officers to the court. But Peter didn't go inside. He stayed outside the gates, warming himself by a fire. And 3 different times, people came up to him and asked, Hey Peter, aren't you a follower of Jesus? Haven't I seen you hanging out with him? Peter did what most of us do when we're afraid. We do whatever we think of to protect ourselves. And Peter lied and said he did not know Jesus. True story. Recently, I accidentally knocked over a vase. When my parents heard the shatter, they came rushing to see what happened. And even though I was the only one in the room, and I was standing right near the broken pieces, I told them I didn't do it and I didn't know how it happened. Have you ever denied something like Peter or I did because you were worried about getting in trouble? How did your parents respond? How do you think Jesus responded to Peter? Well, later on, after Jesus rose from the dead on Easter, Jesus appeared to the disciples. It was early in the morning, and they were out on a boat fishing, but they had not caught any fish all night. Jesus yelled to them from the shore to put out their nets again. And this time, they got so many fish that they couldn't pull the nets back into the boat. When Peter witnessed the miracle and realized it was Jesus, he jumped into the water. I imagine he was maybe embarrassed or ashamed because he had pretended not to know Jesus before. When Peter swam to the shore, eventually, Jesus was cooking breakfast for his followers like nothing had happened. No big deal. They ate breakfast, and after they finished, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, Do you love me? And each time, Peter told him he did. Jesus gave Peter a second chance. Jesus did not punish Peter or make him feel ashamed. He did not try to teach Peter a lesson or make him say sorry before he could eat his breakfast. Grace is knowing that people are going to make bad choices before they even do it. Then, when they do the wrong thing, which they will, maybe on accident, maybe on purpose, you don't take it personally. You don't get angry or punished or try to teach a lesson. You give them a second chance, maybe a third, a fourth, or fifth even. It doesn't matter whether someone is sorry or not. Grace isn't about apologies or forgiveness. And most importantly, the amount you love them before is the same amount you love them after. God came to earth in the form of a human, Jesus, who understood what being a human was like. Jesus was a toddler, a kid, a teenager at one point too. He came to show us examples of God's unconditional love and grace, the way he showed Peter and so many other people in the Bible. He didn't come to earth to enforce rules and punish us. He didn't come to turn bad people into good people by putting them in timeout. Jesus came to make people feel alive by loving them, serving them, and showing them grace, like he did for Peter and like he does for us. There is nothing you can do to earn or to lose grace. It's not an award or trophy or a level you unlock on a video game. Grace is less like a noun, a thing, or an object to hold. And it's more like a verb, an action, something you do. And it takes practice. Which brings me back to the adults. I've heard some of them say, grace is so hard to explain, so hard to understand. Many adults haven't experienced grace, or can't recognize it when it does happen. They can't describe what it feels like or looks like. But between you and me, I don't think adults want to understand grace, because if they did, they would have to start living very differently, not just with kids who mess up, but with coworkers who are just trying to do their best, and with drivers who cut them off in traffic, and they have to practice grace with themselves. Probably, their heads might explode. So now that you have a better idea of what grace is, you could start practicing it. You could start looking for it and feeling it when you mess up, knowing that God always loved you no matter what. And maybe you can model grace for adults in your life. When they mess up, because they know they will. When they're rushing around and spill their drink, or can't get a hold of their anger, or when they call someone a bad name on the road. Instead of pointing out what they did wrong or how they broke the rules, remind them that God loves them without condition, before, through, and after it all. There is nothing they can do to separate them from the love of God. And pro tip from me, it definitely doesn't hurt if you practice a little grace just like Jesus did. Tell your adults you love them and give them another chance from time to time. Parents, they just don't understand.
All right, say bye.
Bye. Bye.
Can't see you, sis.
Bye.